In 1938, when I was about 13 years old, my mother said, let's go to the Indianola Theater. They're having a grand opening. And we came here, and it was so exciting. And I had never seen, floodlights before. And it was just one of the most exciting things I'd ever done. And I still remember everything about it. I even remember the cashier in the ticket booth named Margie with a bright red lipstick. I remember the ushers, Jack Hoover, Mr. Hoffheimer, and Jack ushering us to our seats. And it was really a magnificent event in my life.
We moved to this area in 1947, I believe, when I was 9 years old, and started going to the local theaters. In fact, there's a photograph of the theater at about that time on the wall. The car is a 1949 Ford.
I was a little girl, about 7 or 8 or 9 when we first started coming to the theater. We were a neighborhood of girls, and there were about 5 or 6 of us, and the older ones shepherded the younger ones. And we came every Saturday. Our mothers wrapped our dime in the corner of our handkerchief so we wouldn't lose it. Probably did this for 2 or 3 years, 4 years. About junior high school, this all shifted to the Clinton Theater because we would go on Friday nights and there were boys there.
Started in the very late 40s or early 50s when my mother used to bring me to the dentist at the yellow brick building right next to the theater here. And my reward was always go to the movies after the long needles and the Novocaine and the drills. Sitting in the dark auditorium, those needles and drills went away real fast.
My mother instilled in me a really good, firm love of the movies. We went all the time when I was a kid. And so it was called the Capitol Theater then. There was a movie club at the Capitol Theater. And you got a little ticket for $10, and it had the numbers 1 through 31 around the edges. And every time you came to the theater, they took a hole punch and punched out one of those numbers.
They had some sort of movie club or something here where you would buy a month's paid admissions and get this little card that you could rip off the tickets, and that's how you got in. And I think my parents looked at it as a very cheap way to babysit me on the weekends.
I first came to Studio 35 was in the late 1940s. My father was a part-time manager as a second job. Worked, I believe, about 2 nights a week and also on weekends.
I think the first time I was here was maybe in 2nd grade. It was the double feature for part of a birthday party, and I just recall some of the stuff in the lobby. The one thing that really sticks out in my mind is the frosted eye for Indianola in the doors going outside.
And my girlfriend and I came in, and I think we fell in love that night with Studio 35 because during a night at the opera, when the bad guy came out, the whole audience was hissing and booing and carrying on. It was like audience participation long before the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
My first date was here, and it was, the movie was Stagecoach, and John Wayne was in it, and I remember that more than I do my date.
I was in college, and I was on a first date, and my boyfriend had a car, which was a big deal, so, because Studio 35 was really far away from campus at the time, if he didn't have a car. So I think it was late 80s.
The first time we came here together was our very first date was February 19th of 2000. We got married exactly a year and a month to the date that we met here.
Yeah.
So we got married March 19th the following year. So it was exactly a year and a month to the day. We have a 4-year-old son. So that was, this place was the beginning of, our family.
I think my earliest memory of coming to Studio 35 was probably late 1967, early 1968. And it was a very memorable time because we saw a double feature of A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races. First time I had seen either one of those Marx Brothers classics, and I have a vague but real memory of the situation that this place was so packed, and this was before the bar was put in at the back, so the seats went all the way to the back wall. The whole place packed to the extent that I think there were folding chairs put out in the aisles to accommodate the crowd. And these were movies that then were already 30 years old, and this young crowd was laughing on every punchline, myself included, because we'd never seen them before. This was the first phase, I think, of the big Marx Brothers revival that continued into the mid-70s, and it started here at Studio 35. Very memorable evening.
The first thing I saw here was Harold and Maude. It was playing, and it was snowing outside. We walked here. It was around Christmas time, or shortly after Christmas. We were at the grandparents' house, and she became my wife, but we were walking up the street and saw that it was playing. We stopped, came in, had some beers. I was completely underage, had a blast.
Probably in 54 or 55, when I was a student at Crestview Junior High School, a gang of us guys from Tibbet Road decided to go to the movies one afternoon. Got on our bicycles, rode up to the studio here, paid our 25 cents, got our popcorn, went in, sat down, waiting for the movie to start. Lights came down, and all of a sudden, what are we seeing? We're seeing some documentary about some nudist colony in Florida. And we were like 13, 14 or something. We didn't know whether to hide behind the seats, look at the screen. Anyway, they're playing badminton, volleyball, swimming, eating lunch at a picnic table. I want to tell you, that summer, the boys from Tibbet Road realized why God put girls on this earth.
Well, we first came here in probably the 90s with one of our girlfriends, and the place was a little crazy at the time. The floors were all sticky and the seats were kind of jankety, but that's part of the charm. It's always a very comfortable place to come in. Once we moved into Clintonville, well, then it became the local place to go.